Thanks for joining. We're recording, but we're going to just wait a minute or two because there's been a couple of other people talking to us about joining today. So we're just going to pause for a second before we get going, just to see if they join on time. And it's actually an HR director that's looking to get 10 of a team on, so we want to see if they catch it, or if not, they'll get the recording. But if you can bear with us for a second, mate, and then we'll get going.
Yeah, no problem.
Cheers. And we'll obviously cut all this off the recording when we share it. We got other people joining the event, did I hear? Or
yes, Trev already joined us. Hi, Trev. Thanks for coming.
Hi.
Hello, mate.
And Jane is joining now. Jane Cole.
Okay. That might be somebody from Hannah's side.
Hi, Jane. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, we're just hanging on for a minute or so just to see if there's anybody, a couple of other people turning up, because I've been having conversations this morning about people joining, but they're not here yet. So
yeah, I think the rest of my team are joining from Sophiros. That's Hannah Slack.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hi Jane. Yeah, nice to meet you. Kind of. Brilliant. Yeah, it was Hannah I was thinking of when I was saying that. I was just being cautious about it because I didn't know whether you were from Sophiros or not.
Yeah, I am.
Good stuff. So obviously we'll crop all this front end before we send out the recording. If some can't make it and you want to share it on.
Oh, say I may have trouble with the room.
Hannah is joining.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi, Hannah. Can you hear us? You are on mute. We hope you can hear us.
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Yes, great.
Oh, okay. There's a few of us. We've got a few people in a meeting room here. Using my laptop to connect to the telly. So.
Oh, okay. Just heard the ding dong to say somebody else is at the door. So we don't normally hang around. We knew you were going to join, Hannah, so we've just been hanging on a few minutes before we start.
Oh, thank you.
It's okay.
Yeah, we've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 of us. There may be a couple more joining, but they might also be joining independently as well. So.
Okay. Well, we can make a start in the next minute, and then we can try and let them in as we go. So, and you might think this is a virtual reality background, but it's not. I'm just actually in a cool office in Cardiff, and it's just blurred out, but it makes it look very surreal.
It does look weird.
Good.
Yeah, it does look weird.
You know, it's real.
Yeah, like cork.
Good. Right. Okay. Well, let's make a start, because I think we try and keep these to about 20 minutes where we can. Sometimes you might over, but if we're 4 minutes past now, so we're going to be going till 25 past to half past, and hope that's okay for everybody. Right. Okay. So I'm going to kind of do the kickoff. So, and then we can send it out from this point on the recording. Hi everyone, thanks ever so much for joining. I think this is number 14 of our webinar series, and we've got a good one coming up next month, which is BTFA for CEOs. But for this version, we are talking about going from lean systems to human systems, and that's largely because I've been in this space for the most part of my 40-year career in industry around Europe and the world. And realised quite early on that it's all about people, and if we don't actually focus on that, then all the capex investment tools, techniques and everything else we try and do technically doesn't always land. And we found that we know a lot of things about the mechanistic side of the world, the materials. We know about polymers and metallurgy and atoms and how they all fit together. And when it comes to systems, we know about Python and C++ coding. But when it comes to people, kind of go, yeah, let's do, an engagement survey. We don't get much deeper than that. So what we've found at Ducks in a Row, applying BTFA over the last 5 years with international clients and leadership teams, is that when people know more about themselves, how their brains work, how each other and how each other's brains work, everything else gets better. It all starts to fall in line because we get very deep alignment about what we're trying to achieve. So that hopefully sets the frame for anybody that doesn't know us and hasn't met us before. And we're going to kind of go through that in this presentation today about trying to start trying to frame the whole subject around people and why it makes such a massive difference and hits the bottom line in sustainable ways much faster than the approach that we've been encouraged to pursue, let's say, for the last 30 years in the market. So lean changed how we think about work. It really did. I mean, we've got definitions of value. It's about waste elimination, and it's gone through its different iterations from quality circles to world-class manufacturing to lean to operational excellence, agile, and Six Sigma got bolted on along the way. So we've got lots of methods, methodologies, tools, techniques, things we do, frameworks like DMAIC and PDCA, and it's great, and it has done a lot of people a lot of good. But I think in many cases we've all heard that change doesn't stick. There's a sustainability issue. Culture doesn't change. And actually, when you look at some of the stats that we'll show you today, you'll see that some of the outcomes of the way we approach change in leadership in business doesn't necessarily get us the outcomes that we need to have really high performing teams and high performance cultures that last for decades and generations. So, it is good. It asks us to go and see what's really going on, identify waste very clinically, remove it, think about flow, process flow, single piece flow, those kind of terminologies come into it, reduce the variation, which is where Six Sigma really played its part, and create, a learning organization, systems that learn. And as we know, that's very utopian and very hard to achieve in practice. And a large part of why it doesn't work is down to, defensiveness and blame and, infighting and the friction that comes from people being human and surviving their environment. Because a lot of the way we approach this stuff triggers defense mechanisms. And it's so easy to see once you understand how brains work and easy to see what you can do about it. But it's almost impossible to recognize and see, and if you don't. So that helps to frame it. Levent, I'm doing a lot of talking here, mate. Did you want to jump in and get a word in edgeways?
Yes, Lean has introduced a systematic approach to think and to improve our processes and systems and to collaborate and to reach teamwork. But still, there is one challenge remaining. After all these continuous improvement and lean implementations, we still see some problems. Like change initiatives still fail. Typically, companies are reporting 70 to 90% of failure rates about change. What do we mean about change? Changing the company style or culture from a problematic mode to continuous improvement mode. This is what we mean by change. And also related to engagement, Gallup reports that worldwide the engagement is very low. It's 21% only, and it goes down to 6% or 4% in several parts of Europe. So imagine if only 1 person out of 5 is engaged, how can you expect collaboration, better alignment, and teamwork? So that's a problem in front of sustainable change. And improvements effort fade in time. Even though we may develop our standards, people don't follow the standards in time, and developments are lost. And leaders struggle to sustain behaviors. And sometimes there is a motivation, there's a momentum to improve continuously, but this behavior is mostly not sustainable. So these are the challenges in front of Lean.
Yeah, this is what best practice has led to, isn't it? We teach people at Harvard and INSEAD and Oxbridge, and there's a lot of business schools out there around London, and everyone's got an MBA, but the reality is there's a lot of really good practice in that, but we have got, like in the UK, 9% engagement rate, 91% disengagement rate, if you want to flip that. And we've now changed the word stress to burnout in the vernacular that's sort of circulating in language in business world around the world, globally. So we're doing stuff, we're seeing a lot of efficiency improvements, but it's starting to hit a ceiling, and it's starting to reflect in burnout and stress and all these different things. So there's another great opportunity to improve, basically, because we could be in a much better place if we get the people bit right. So again, what's the difference? Why do we need to improve the people bit? Or why do we need to establish better standards and a deeper understanding of what it means to be human in a workplace and collaborate and innovate and all these different things? I think from a process point of view, processes are predictable, they're mechanistic. You can execute a process, right? You can program a machine and expect it to do pretty much the same thing every time. You can observe what happens and you can repeat it. People aren't like that. I used to laugh because it's not like physics, where you've got an equal and opposite reaction that we learn in secondary school about you press on a table and the table's pressing back. That's easy to calculate. People aren't like that. You push a person and you might get a punch in the face, right? Because there's an emotional aspect to the way they're going to react to any kind of threat in the world. And the way we are as leaders, the signals that the environment we create, the social and technical signals, trigger people and trigger their brains to survive. And they've got a belief system, they've got a wiring pattern that's been established through their life, which interprets the world from a prediction point of view. You've got an emotional content to the way that world is reacted to upon the output of that, which is happening at about 11.8 million bits of sensory data per second in the pre-conscious or subconscious. You become aware of what your brain's decided, and if there's any suggestion that there's any threat in any of that, you're going to resist. And that can be another department, a different function in the business, the investors, anybody, the boss or your colleagues and your peers. So we've got this human element that causes friction and problems and slows things down. And again, we can talk about case studies. We've seen a projected 350 million ROI over 6 years actually deliver 410 million ROI in 4 years because we helped remove some of that friction with BTFA. So it does make a massive difference. It does hit the bottom line, and it does get businesses into a better place faster. So Levent, I've took over again. Then back to you, mate. Let's tag team it and take it in turns.
Yes, as you said, processes and systems are mechanically documented. I mean, it's easy to document them. It's easy to teach people accordingly and develop and check processes. So if you check processes and systems, if you see any gap, any room for improvement, you can just improve them. Whereas the human operating system is not well documented, and there is no well-known standard approach to deal with human. But human plays a vital role in success and sustainability. So the question is, do we need to understand the operating system? The answer is yes. As you know, I worked for Toyota for 16 years and another 16 years for other manufacturers in automotive. I know very well that Lean is just a copy of Toyota production system. And Toyota doesn't hide any information. In fact, Toyota shares those Lean toolset with other people. At the same time, they know that the tools only will not bring sustainable success, because the key point is human bit, and human relations and culture is not easy to copy because you cannot observe it. That's why it's not easy to replicate. But the real key to success is hidden in understanding the human operating system. And this is what we are trying to do with BTFA, Believe, Think, Feel, Act approach. With this approach, you can understand human operating system, you can teach people and adjust systems.
Brilliant, thank you, mate. Yeah, I just had I'm with a strategic partner over here in Wales today, and we just had a very similar conversation, actually. So I think what's good about this, from my point of view, is that this is incredibly exciting, because the challenges and the problems that have evolved and are now presenting themselves in the market for businesses everywhere globally that are following, how do you do what lean? How do you become, or replicate? You're not going to copy Toyota because they're a different context, they're a different business, got different outcome objectives. But how do you understand what's allowed them to be top of their game in their sector for 90 years and do that in your own business, in your own sector? What's the bit that makes the difference? And I think, if you look at the Toyota way, you've got two main pillars, and not everybody's aware of this, but you've got a continuous improvement pillar and you've got a respect for humanity pillar. And there's sort of other philosophical elements that sit behind that under continuous improvement, production, make things. You've got monozukuri, which literally means build things, right? Build product, and hitozukuri, which is build people. And I think, I kind of got a feel for this, but I've learned so much more since working with Levent over the last 7 years as my business partner, about the real inside track in Toyota and how much they prioritize that hitozukuri, that build people piece. Now, the translation of a philosophy, a Japanese approach, the way their language works differently through kanji characters, all of that can also be a fear trigger and something that triggers Western brains to defend against, because it's alien, it's new. Because we've been very much conditioned by, a STEM-based education. We're scientists, we want logic. We're engineers, we want logic. We're accountants, we want logic, and we want the proof. Like the old American saying when I first started was, in God we trust, all others bring data. And it means that we don't trust people unless you can prove what you're talking about. And for me, the exciting bit here is that the neuroscience gets past the philosophy, gets past the psychology, and gives us a biological mechanism, the human operating system, that can easily be understood quickly by everybody. And not if you go and study neuroscience, but based on what we've done to compress it into, a deliverable, scalable, replicable education program. It's blowing smoke, towards ourselves, of course. But it is true. It's what we've done. We spent 20 years looking at this stuff and compressing it into this experience that transforms the way you can understand what you've got to do. And this is our favorite phrase in Ducks in a Row, to create the conditions in which brains perform at their best. And if that's not our, common theme, our foundation that our leadership teams align to, then you're going to be pulling in different directions about what you think the ultimate outcome objective is. And if that's financial or it's, mechanistic, or then you're going to be doing things and making the same mistakes along the way that we've been making and seeing in the market forever. So it's a very exciting time to be able to get to the second bullet there, is understanding how people experience the process, not just doing the process to them. And that's actually where the big difference comes and where we get a lot better at doing this. So, Levent, back to you, mate.
So while we are looking at continuous improvement or lean practice, in fact, we often miss what's really happening in the brains. In fact, under the surface, what's going on in brains is that the brain is processing these kind of questions. Is it safe for me? Does this help me? Can I trust this? What does this mean for me? And unless we prepare conditions that will give positive answers to all these questions, people will never feel safe and will always be disengaged because they will be scared of collaboration because they perceive threat, etc.
Yeah, I can feel exposed. And we talk about psychological safety, don't we? But what have we got to do? What do we have to believe about, and what do we have to align over in terms of how we conduct ourselves? And going back to the Toyota model, respectfully, because that triggers the release of oxytocin and builds trust and all the things that make a difference to the way people actually act and react in the world. But we quite often talk about psychological safety at a surface level, and anecdotally what we try and do with it doesn't really, or quite often doesn't explore the science. As soon as everyone understands the science, they know exactly what's got to be done, and some of these questions can be addressed in that sense. So I think that's where we're at now. I mean, for anyone that doesn't know the model, we've tried to, like I say, simplify, keep it very easy to understand in terms of human brain function. And it's basically this: believe, think, feel, act. I mean, it's BTFA. This is how it's being used with our clients and how it's talked about. But just to unpack it very quickly, we have to have a wiring pattern, right? There are neurons in everybody's brain and they function the same way. They use the same neurochemicals. So there's no getting away from it that what is the output of a human, what we see on the outside, the behavior originates in the brain wiring firing. So we call that a belief because you have to believe, you have to have a brain wiring pattern to even believe whether pineapple on pizza is good or bad, right? There's an emotional connection to that because of the way it tastes. So you have to have a wiring pattern. It has to fire to have a belief about anything being good, and that can include how you deploy strategy, how you lead a change program, how you scale up from a development phase in an invested company to production or whatever else it might be. But everyone's belief about what that model looks like will determine how they think about it, what they feel about it, and other people that might not share the same belief, and therefore how they act and react to each other. And unless we actually start getting on top of this stuff, we all end up working on autopilot, causing so much friction and slowing the progress of the business down without even knowing we're doing it. And as soon as we understand this model and everybody's on the same page with it, we can all see how we get in our own way, get in each other's way, and just become the grease in the cogs rather than the friction that stops those cogs whirring. So that's what we're talking about. Go on, mate. I'm going to keep tag teaming back to you.
Yes, if we think about lean and continuous improvement, this is PDCA, plan, do, check, action. This is how we improve processes and systems continuously. But as we have seen in the previous slide, human operating system doesn't work like that. It's not PDCA. Our brains work a different way. Believe, think, feel, act. So if the demands of the workplace conflicts with the functionality of the brain, there will be conflict, and this will push people to their defense. And ownership will never come. If people don't take the ownership of the processes and standards, sustainable continuous improvement will never be coming. If we can balance these two worlds, PDCA and BTFA, and create a condition, create an environment where brains work at their best, people can better adapt to changes. We will see stronger engagement and ownership, which will bring sustainable change and high performance.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's important, everyone on the call, to call this out. You just heard that from the guy that used to be the country president of Toyota. He didn't just work at Toyota, he became, a director in different functions 3 times over, and then ultimately country president. So, if anyone knows that this works in practice, it's Levent. So I think we're very lucky to have him on the call and benefiting from his wisdom. I mean, does this work? Yes, it works. We're doing this. We've worked with an aerospace company in the Midlands for a couple of years now. And we've got to a point where they've been through the sort of senior leadership team, expanded through the leadership team down to supervisor level. Now they've gone to master coaches so that they can start to support rolling out to all frontline staff. And it's fundamentally transformed the way they're working. So, and now that's starting to show in the KPIs and the dashboard. So they've gone from 6% margin to 12.4% margin. And, I think our contribution to that's well over £1 million for what they've spent. So there's 7 times ROI on this stuff. But, when you look at the problems we face in business before you have got the BTFA language introduced to the way you can have conversations about what challenges are, you might ask questions like the top bullet point: why aren't people following the process? Because, and immediately you can hear in that there's an element, you're already making a decision that there's a people problem there and you're going to blame them. They should implies guilt psychologically. They should be doing it the way that we've described. And of course, it's not as straightforward as that when you come to human beings, because of what we said earlier about, equal and opposite reactions and pressing on tables. We humans don't work like that. So when we do start to introduce this whole new language about brains and brain function, we improve the quality of the questions. Talking about improving quality, cost, and delivery, you've got to improve the quality of language to be able to ask better questions. And that's what we do. So the question might move to what beliefs are driving this behavior. And then the next step is the really important one. What environmental factors What are we doing? What have we invested in? How much imposed control, lack of self-determination is there because of the systems we've chosen? How are our behaviours as leadership, the assumptions we're making, the approach we've taken to strategy deployment? How are these things causing the belief that's driving that behaviour because that person feels like they've got to be defensive in their space to survive, right? So when you've got the ability to have that conversation, when you've asked that different question, the action is so much more obvious about what you've got to do. You know, improve the systems that create the best working conditions for the human operating system. We've got to prioritise optimal brain function as part of our strategic outcome objectives, because if we don't, we're just creating an environment where people are putting more of their glucose energy their brain needs to process the world towards their own defences and not towards the collaboration, the innovation, the critical thinking, you know, and the problem solving that actually drives the business forward. So we totally shoot ourselves in the foot by not considering this stuff and thinking that we can just keep doing investment in CapEx, systems development, new ERP systems, you know, training technical things around lean and process improvements, and expect the human bit to just fall in line. You know, we've got the last 40 years of evidence that says that doesn't work, and the last 90 years of evidence inside Toyota that says that it does. So it's yeah, it's incredible that the world is where it is. But like I said earlier, it's also very exciting that we now have got the ability to introduce the neuroscience side of it and make it all make sense so people can get on board of it all. Levent, your turn.
Yes, so far we have been talking about system, processes, and people. Now it's time to look at the people bit more in detail. So far we have been using psychology. Now we looking at the recent advancements in neuroscience. It's better to look at the people bit using neuroscience to understand human behavior better. This is exactly what we are doing with BTFA program.
Yeah, and again, we've given it the title, The Future of Leadership. I really do think it is the next step forward. It's, you know, it's a massive hole in what we've been able to understand and know historically. That's nobody's fault. That's just because technology wasn't developed enough to look inside brains. It is now. It's so critical to performance in all walks of society, not just in industry and businesses. But we've got it. You know, why would we ignore it? And the answer is because brains will reject anything that's new that hasn't already been mapped. So it's a bit of a catch-22. We talk about neuroscience being the great big opportunity for people to take their businesses forward faster and better, but the brains that we can describe are already rejecting it as not applicable quite often, which is, you know, natural human behavior. It's really interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's it, guys. I mean, we obviously said we should try and keep it to 20 minutes. We're pretty much there. We haven't done too bad today. You know, but between Levent and I, Levent, like he said, he worked for Man Truck and Bus. He worked for Carson. He's consulted to Renault. I've worked all over the world in different sectors. And, you know, we've seen everyone spend the decades we've been alive in industry trying to improve systems, trying to improve processes, and it falling over for all sorts of different reasons. And putting it really bluntly, a lot of those reasons are people, despite some of the old sayings that we got from great, you know, management advisors like Deming saying, I think it was 94% of problems don't talk back, suggesting that, you know, it was predominantly about process and systems, but that there was a context to that which isn't always transferred in the saying. So you know, we are in a great place. We can take this forward constructively with standardized language, observations, knowledge, etc., and actually develop this people bit in ways we've never been able to before. So it's so exciting. But again, you know, you can find us on LinkedIn. You know who we are now. We might have 1 or 2 minutes. If anyone has got a question, we can perhaps cover one off before we end the call. Cool. So
it's Hannah. Sorry, you know I have something to say. It was just a really quick one. Like, off the top of your head, what would you have, like, one top tip or one action that we could do? So if we're finding that people aren't sticking to a process, what could we do today to understand the human operating system? Like, what methods do you think are most effective, I guess?
Yeah, the key thing is there's two bits of it, and it's two parts to the model, we often talk about, you know, process plans. What do you think about this? This is what we've got to try and achieve. This is the outcome objective. It's all very logical. Humans are emotional creatures predominantly, because that's part of the defense mechanisms. So what's a much better thing to do is ask how people feel and what they believe good looks like in this situation. And if you can, because the brain's a prediction machine, we're all thinking ahead, whether that's in milliseconds, whether it's in minutes, hours, days, months, years, you know, lifetimes. We're always thinking, are we going to be safe? And the brain's already modeling a prediction within milliseconds of the next few, you know, moments in life being safe. And it's whether the inbound sensory stimulus the brain gets that's mapped against that prediction that allows us to have an emotional response. So if the person is in a situation, like I say, not following process, they're doing that for a reason as far as their brain is concerned. If somebody comes along and says, why aren't you following process? It's immediately a challenge, it's a threat trigger. They're going to get defensive. They can't help it. It's going to happen way before they become conscious of their reactions. So if you actually connect with people, ask them how they feel and try and understand their beliefs, then you're in a much better position to be able to understand what the triggers are in the environment, what their rationale is for doing it their way. And actually, that's when you can start to get good input to developing standard operating procedures or approaches, and or helping fill the gaps that the other person's got in their knowledge, because there's like a knowledge threshold. You can't know everything. And you can then start sharing different perspectives. And that's when, you know, you do that through storytelling. Did you realize this, or did you realize that? Did you know that the corporate group has, you know, want to achieve this? And you find that when people can fill the gaps and make sense of something, they will choose a different way of doing things or get on board with the way that you want to do it. But they've got to change their belief about it and feel like it's the right thing to do. Logical instruction is just imposed control, and it only triggers negative emotional responses. So it's about working with the brain mechanism rather than against it, basically. Hope that helps.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Great stuff. Super. Well, I mean, guys, you know where we are. You can find us on LinkedIn, and girls on the call. Do reach out. Any other questions we haven't had a chance to cover, feel free to get in touch. You've got an email address there on the screen that you can use as well. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks, Levent, mate, for all your wisdom. And we shall see you again in a month talking about BTFA for CEOs. See you soon. Cheers, everyone.